going on, y'all? It's Relaxing OG_Jackson, and a star was born this past Saturday from defeating the former champion. We can get into it a little later. UFC 292, the latest fight card to happen from the UFC. This is a Fight Entertainment Index. We're back to talk about good old MMA. And we're not going to talk about anything else other than MMA today. We're going to get straight into it. There's not much to really go over. It's the same things that we've been over for the last few weeks. But we about to get back into it because we're about to talk about this first fight. Marlon Vera, Pedro Munoz. Interesting fight. I thought that was one of the more interesting matchups of the weekend. I thought that Pedro Munoz was definitely the better power puncher. I always say had the more power of the two leading into the fight. That being said, though, I thought the fight was pretty interesting because Marlon Vera being a slow starter, he has power as well. And that showed throughout the fight. I gave Marlon Vera, even though he wasn't the busier fighter in the first round, I thought he landed some of the better strikes in the first round. Pedro Munoz came back. He seemed like he started to kind of figure him out a little bit in the second round. He was kind of trying to implement his game plan. But leading into the third round, Pedro Munoz was getting rocked, or I would say it looked like he was getting hurt by some of Marlon Vera's punches. And Cheeto just kind of controlled the fight in the third round. And I think that kind of cemented the deal for him. He fought a good fight. I thought it was a interesting showing from him. He's clearly a good striker. I think he's actually really good. I don't know if I necessarily want him to get the next title shot or not. That's kind of neither here nor there. I think he put in a 7 type performance, impressive for Marlon Vera. He proved a lot of people. Well, I think a lot of people already think of him as one of the top contenders in that division. So, I have nothing but good things to say about his performance. Still a slow starter, but I guess that's neither here nor there. So it is what it is. I thought he did a good job. The next fight we had, Mario Batista versus Damon Blackshear. Damon Blackshear came in on 7 days notice. He was just on the most recent fight night. He was looking to come in here and beat Mario Batista. He was supposed to fight Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt pulled out because of an injury, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, I figured that Mario Batista would kind of be in a decent position to win this fight. Damon Blackshear, while he looked to be better on the ground, especially the first round, I would say the action, he was definitely being the aggressor, trying to take him down, trying to work him however he could. But towards the second round, I wouldn't say he necessarily did anything better than Damon Blackshear, but Damon Blackshear, clearly his output had slowed down between the first and the second round, and it didn't get better in the third round. Actually, in the third round, if I'm not mistaken, Mario Batista took him down and try to work him on the ground and look for a twister of his own. Would have been very ironic. It didn't happen. The fight went to a decision. It was a decent fight. I thought that Mario Batista and Damon Blackshear both looked like they had, I guess if you can say it, they left a little bit of meat on the bone, both of them. And I think that both of them could honestly go back and improve a little bit from that fight and that showing. I think Damon Blackshear has skills to be somewhat of a threat in the bantamweight division. I gave that fight a 6, not because the fight wasn't necessarily good, but I think that both of them could have fought better. The next fight we get into, Ian Gary versus Neil Magny. Ian Gary was supposed to fight Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal pulled out of the fight for another injury. And so we got the late replacement in Neil Magny. There's a little bit of trash talk at the press conference, but for the most part, just kind of a matchup between two, I would say, top 15, top 20 welterweights. This fight wasn't very close at all. I think that I scored maybe 2 10-8 rounds between the second and the third. Ian Gary pretty much led the fight on the feet. He leg kicked the hell out of Neil Magny until he essentially couldn't stand up and was scooting on the ground. It looked like it was from leg pain. I didn't really enjoy watching this fight like that. I think if you're an Ian Gary fan, I think you'll definitely get something out of that. It was a dominant performance for sure. But because it was so dominant, in my opinion, I feel like Ian Gary should have finished the fight. I think the only reason he kept Neil Magny in there was to look for the highlight reel knockout. And, I get it. You want to be a star, entertaining, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But that being said, it was clear that Neil Magny had nothing for Ian Gary. as soon as the second round hit, it just seemed like there was just nothing, no gas in the tank. I'm not sure as to why that is. I'm not sure if Neil Magny came into the fight hurt. I'm not sure as to what it is, but that was not a good performance from Neil Magny. I gave that fight a 6, not because it's a dominant performance by Ian Geary. I cannot take that away from him, but it was so dominant, I would have liked to see it finish. The next fight we had was Zhang Weili versus Amanda Lemos. And Amanda Lemos came into the fight. She seemed to want to throw some hard strikes at Zhang Weili. But leading into the fight, Zhang Weili just seemed to take her down to the ground, work her a little bit. Then, like later on in the fight, when they were standing up on the feet, she was getting there on the feet as well. It didn't seem like Amanda Lemos really had much of an answer for some of the things that Zhang Weili was like bringing to her. I actually gave Zhang Weili at least 1 or 2 10-8 rounds in that fight as well, because it was just extremely dominant. Like probably a few times in that fight, it could have been stopped. And I mean, I think watching those 2 fights back to back, I've seen people say it in the comments like, hey, people should get better at throwing the towel in and this, that, and the third. And I agree. After watching those 2 fights, it's like, hey, like those fighters could have been out of there. But especially for Neil Magny, because that was wild. But you know, I give this fight a 7. Zhang Weili never disappoints with her performances. I mean, you know, she's lost a couple times. But that being said, though, she has definitely proven herself to be one of the best Asian champions the UFC has ever seen. You know, I think every time I see her fight, it's always like a great fight for her. So, you know, shouts out to Zhang Weili. People, we get to the main event of the evening. Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling. Interesting fight. I had Aljamain Sterling going into this fight. I didn't really see much of a way that Sean O'Malley could have won. But needless to say, we go into the fight. They're kind of exchanging leg kicks. Kind of, you know, I would say Aljamain Sterling was trying to work his way in. You know, Sean O'Malley being the lengthier opponent, I think it was giving him a little bit of pause to stay on the outside and try to work his way in. If you notice, like he got into a grappling exchange with him maybe like once or twice against the cage. Regardless, leading into the second round, not too long into it, Aljamain overextended just enough, and Sean O'Malley came back with a right hand out of hell, knocked him down, and he put him down on the ground. And there's conversation about, was the fight stopped early? My opinion is this: Aljamain was rocked bad enough and getting hit hard on the ground enough to where I'm not mad at the finish. When you're rolling around but still getting hit the way he was getting hit, it's hard to say that that finish wasn't justified. It is what it is. That's the fight game. You know, you got to get up. I mean, he could have put himself in a position to where he would have got hit if he got up, but they finished the fight, and nobody can be mad at it. Sean O'Malley, he's the champ, period. So you got to congratulate him. Came from the Contender Series, and now he's the man. And, you know, I'm curious to see who else he will fight. I think call me crazy, but I think they're going to try and put him against Henry Cejudo. I just don't see the Davishvili fight happening next. And I don't see him fighting any other contenders next, because he's clearly the one. So, you know, I give that fight a 9. This fight card was okay. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't the best. But that being said, there were some moments on here, at the least the main event, that you should see. I'm waiting for the next one personally. This one had some fights that I wouldn't say necessarily upset me, but weren't the most entertaining. And on the fight index, if you're not entertaining, you're gonna get a low score. You feel me? So it's just kind of what it is. So with that being said, I think we're gonna shut this one down. A little quick one for y'all. I'll see y'all on the next one, or I might see y'all a little sooner. Who knows? Stay tuned. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.